Behind Jimmy Butler's relentless attack, Eric Spoelstra's brilliance, and the lethal outside shooting and grit of their supporting cast, the Miami Heat have accomplished the unthinkable during the 2022-23 NBA season. A championship franchise like Miami, with an ironclad culture, would take exception to the word unthinkable. But when you comb through the NBA history books, that's a justified label. Today, we're going to talk about how the Miami Heat produced the greatest finals run in NBA history and how, through the years, the organization consistently managed to find diamonds in the middle of a haystack. Barely squeaking in the playoffs by snagging the number 8 seed in the play-in tournament, Miami becomes the only team in history to reach the finals with a negative point differential in the regular season. Up to this point, no finals team has experienced a bigger jump in net rating from the 82-game season to their subsequent playoff run. The Heat were minus 0.5 per 100 possessions from October to early April, ranking 21st in the league. In 18 playoff games, that has jumped to plus 4.6, second only to eventual champs Denver Nuggets. After losing the first play-in game, Miami found themselves trailing 90-87 at home to the Chicago Bulls with 3 minutes remaining in the win-or-go-home game for the last spot. Since that moment, the Heat have been on a mission. They outscored the Bulls 15-1 down the stretch and haven't looked back. 45 days later, they are competing for a championship. There's a reason 8-seeded teams rarely make the finals. This isn't college basketball. The Cinderella story is tougher to write in the NBA, not only because winning 4 games is immensely difficult compared to the March Madness model, but there's a much larger sample size during the season to suggest who the stronger teams are. That's what makes the Miami Heat's run definitely one for the books. And how they've done it makes it even more impressive. Behind a successful franchise is a well-run front office. The Miami Heat has been a consistent playoff and finals contender ever since Pat Riley took the Heat's top post of president of basketball operations in 1995. They've been in the finals 5 times and won 3 championships. The Heat front office's ability to consistently find overlooked players out of nowhere and develop them into bona fide NBA starters and players continues to amaze the league and the fans alike. During the 2022-23 season, at no point did Miami show any signs it could be a finals contender. Certainly not when they fell to 7-11 in November, or when they lost 6 out of 7 games near the All-Star break, or when they finished 27th in three-point accuracy, only better than Toronto, Charlotte, and Houston, 3 lottery teams with an average of 30 wins. They didn't prove it was possible all year, until it actually mattered. Entering the playoffs, Miami's odds to win the NBA title were 150-1, the longest of any team to reach the NBA Finals since the 1976 ABA-NBA merger, according to SportsOddsHistory.com. With playoff Jimmy leading the charge, this group backs down from no challenge. To them, there is no mountain too steep to climb, and no opponent stands in the way as an impenetrable force. The Heat are just the second 8 seed to reach the finals, joining the 1999 New York Knicks. During that season, 7 undrafted players were on the Heat's postseason roster. That is the most undrafted players to play in a postseason for a team to appear in the finals in the modern draft era. Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin, Haywood Highsmith, Udonis Haslem. You have probably heard all about them by now. Add Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez Jr., and Nikola Jovic to that list. What do all of them have in common? They were either undrafted players or were drafted late or very late in the draft. They were either not considered in the top 5 or 10 of their draft classes, a second-round talent, or worse, not talented enough to play in the NBA. The majority of them, if not all of them, were passed up by many scouts and general managers alike. But not the Miami Heat. Leading the task of finding those hidden talents in the draft for Miami are Glenn Chet Kammerer and Adam Simon. Kammerer's and Simon's names were not the first ones that come to mind when talking about the Miami Heat's success over the past 2 decades, but they are 2 of the most vital people in the organization. They are the secret recipe for the Heat's continued success when it comes to mastering the art of finding those hidden gems. Kammerer has been with the Heat for 27 years, starting as the Heat's West Coast scout to director of scouting, director of player personnel, and vice president of player personnel. Meanwhile, Adam Simon has been with the organization since 1995, starting as an intern in the video room under then video coordinator Erik Spoelstra. Simon also served as scouting coordinator, scout, director of college scouting, director of player personnel, and assistant GM/GM for the Heat G League affiliate Sioux Falls Skyforce. He has been on the scouting staff under Kammerer for years and took over as VP of player personnel when Kammerer decided to reduce his role and become the Heat's senior advisor of basketball operations. Simon has since been promoted as the Heat's vice president of basketball operations and assistant GM. The Heat scouting team for years has been mining gems over gems out of nowhere. It wasn't even fair anymore. The Heat saw something special in players that the other 29 teams cannot. Caleb Martin brought that to life in the Eastern Conference Finals. He came to Miami on a two-way contract in 2021 after being waived by the Charlotte Hornets and quickly worked his way into the Heat rotation. As an undrafted wing in his fourth season, earning just $6.5 million per year, Martin was a savior for the Heat down the stretch. Not only did he fill the void left by P.J. Tucker's departure, playing up or down a position depending on what the matchup called for, but he ultimately became the secondary shot creator Miami needed when Butler's legs got tired. As Kyle Lowry went through his struggles and Bam couldn't convert inside, they were starving for half-court creation and someone to draw attention, attack closeouts, and simply play with confidence. Such also is the case of Duncan Robinson. A former Division III transfer who was not on the draft boards of many teams, Robinson is one of the most lethal sharpshooters in the game today. It was the spring of 2018 and the Heat didn't have any picks for that year's draft. That's when the Heat scouting team saw Robinson and immediately called Spoelstra and told him that they just wrapped up the greatest shooting workout they have ever seen. And so it was at that moment that the Heat set its sight on Robinson. He went from being undrafted to being a part of the Heat's G League team and later on a bona fide starter that played valuable minutes in the playoffs and the NBA Finals. He then went on to sign a 5-year, $90 million contract with the Heat, the largest contract in NBA history for an undrafted player. Hassan Whiteside, although not active in the league anymore, went from an NBA vagabond to becoming one of the most dominating centers in the league during his time and has signed a 4-year, $98 million contract with Miami. Vincent and Struss went from being a bunch of nobodies to being one of the main attractions in the 2023 playoffs and finals. This eye for talent that the Heat organization has that the other 29 teams don't, and to do it consistently is beyond spectacular. Sure, many teams have also hit the head of the nail right from time to time, just like when the Golden State Warriors picked Draymond Green out of the second round, but the ability to do it year after year is what makes the Miami Heat truly above the fray. During the 2023 playoffs, Milwaukee, the number 1 overall seed, experienced the worst timing with Miami catching fire and started gaining momentum. The Heat won Game 1 and continued their dominance in Games 3, 4, and 5. 2 nights after scoring 56 points in Game 4, Butler scored 42 in Game 5, with the highlight being an incredible alley-oop finish to send the game to overtime. The Heat then outlasted the Bucks in the extra period and eliminated the number 1 seed in the East with a 128-126 victory. The Heat finished the Bucks in 5 games with Jimmy Butler toying Bucks defensive specialist Jrue Holiday throughout the series. The New York Knicks were up next. The Knicks, who were the only 8-seeded team that went to the finals before Miami, faced off the Heat in the East semis, reviving the nostalgia of the two teams' fierce rivalry in the late 1990s and early 2000s, with the teams meeting 4 straight years from 1997 to 2000. The Knicks won the last 3 of those series, but the result was different this time around. Miami won Games 1, 3, 4, and 6 despite an injury scare from Butler in Game 1 and Tyler Hero, the Heat's scoring machine, missing the series and the entire playoffs because of a hand injury he suffered in Round 1. Boston, the number 2 seed, fell in too deep of a hole once Miami revved up the defensive pressure. In the first 2 games, where the East Finals was actually won, the Celtics had no answers when Butler decided the fourth quarters were his time to shine. Zooming in, this East Finals matchup was one of the most compelling series in the modern era. The road team won 5 of the 7 encounters, with the Heat winning Game 7 in Boston on the exact date the Celtics captured Game 7 last year in Miami. They were 1 possession from reaching the finals last year, but had to watch Boston celebrate on their home floor after a few tough breaks and untimely misses. The series surely captured the fans' undivided attention as the series went from 3-0 in Miami's favor, then quickly turned to 3-3, paving the way to the pivotal Game 7 in Boston. Miami, as a unit, never thought about the storylines and narratives surrounding a blown 3-0 lead. All that mattered was finding a way to bounce back and get one more win. If they could recover from the heartbreak they suffered 48 hours prior, losing on Derek White's buzzer-beating putback in Game 6, it would say a lot about the Heat's mental fortitude and resolve. And they did. Because more than any other team, the 2022-2023 Miami Heat appears to be made of steel. You cannot break them. They kept coming back at you. Not with Spoelstra on the sideline, Butler and Kyle Lowry as the locker room voices, and the Godfather, Pat Riley, watching from the stands. Riley consistently drives his superstars to levels they were yet to unlock, carves out a perfect path for every role player that enters his system, and establishes the values for his guys to follow on and off the court. Within Miami, you will never hear about the lack of accountability or a group not being prepared for any matchup. Plus, in terms of player development and putting guys in the right positions to thrive, there is no better franchise or coaching staff than Miami. Not even close. The structure and culture around the Heat have helped these players grow and forced them to develop good habits and a winning mentality that shaped them to be the players they become. Led by Riley, the Miami Heat organization worked in lockstep and consistently turned those diamonds in the rough to be part of the hardest working, best conditioned, most professional, unselfish, toughest, meanest, nastiest team in the NBA. Heat culture may not be for everyone, but it sure does make dreams happen for anyone who wants to do the work.